welcome to another episode here as Lighting Bot. Thank you for tuning in. Today we will be talking to Adrian about Unity and Unreal lighting as a main topic. He has worked at Unity before and he has used Unreal and other engines. It's going to be interesting to get his point of view according to his experience. But before we get started, a reminder, Lighting Bot is a community for everyone, regardless of lighting artists, but the intention is for you to learn more lighting. So we do portfolio review, we do highlights whenever possible, we have Unreal tutorials, Unity tutorials, mentorship as well if you're eager to fast track your career. Our biggest community probably at this stage, at least in Europe, so you can watch more stuff over there. And I didn't make a banner for that, but we do have a lighting competition coming up hosted by Decogen and ourselves, so that's a good opportunity to show off your skills as well. So let's get started while we have the chance. Adrian, welcome.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. You know, I'm just chilling, relaxing. So you're online, but we'll do a live talk. No, just kidding. So yeah, Adrian, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. So I'm Adrian. So I'm originally from Singapore. I started way back in lighting for animations for a small company back in Singapore doing like TV shows and kids shows and stuff like that. But then I felt that games was something I played growing up, and then I just decided to jump onto games because compared to animation lighting, games offer me more challenge personally, which is why I make the switch. Just really focus hard on getting myself acquainted with engines, with real-time lighting, getting myself into just all the knowledge I could find online at the time in real-time lighting, in video game engines and stuff like that. And then I landed a job at Ubisoft Singapore. Spent quite a while there, working on a bunch of Assassin's Creeds and stuff like that. And then 3 years ago, I made the jump to UK to Supermassive Games, work on a horror game called Medan, if anyone play it or heard of it. And then I went to Denmark, Copenhagen, where I joined Unity Technologies, where I work as part of their live and digital team. That's what they're called now. Yeah. So which helps. There's a team that helps to promote and to come up with solutions to engage artists into using Unity and stuff. And then recently, I've just joined Creative Assembly as a senior lighting artist on the console team, working on an unannounced sci-fi FPS game.
All right. Unfortunately, I didn't get Adrian drunk before the live talk, so he won't be spilling any beans. But maybe another time we'll do that, so we get some more information about these hidden games he's working on. So, Adrian, there's one thing I noticed in your, I guess, track record so far. You were a junior lighting artist before you studied at Digipen, right?
Yeah.
So what made you do a junior lighting artist and then go to Digipen? What made you make that decision rather than just skipping studying and just continuing?
It's kind of, Digipen also serves as because they do a lot of, this is the video game college, pretty much, right? So, and I felt that even just learning stuff on my own on the internet and stuff like that wasn't enough to get me up to the level quality that a company at the time, like in Singapore, the games industry in Singapore is pretty small. You have only like 1 or 2 big companies at the time. So I felt that I didn't have enough knowledge or enough help to get to the level quality that a company like Ubisoft will hire me. So I joined Digipen, took up a course at Digipen, and try and get more knowledge. Just really try and gobble up whatever I could learn from the lecturers or from my fellow students there. So yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
And because previously as a junior lighting artist, I was only working in animation lighting, and film and VFX lighting and games lighting is very different.
So you said you were at Ubisoft as well for a while. Let's talk about your experience there. What did you learn when you were working? Because you were first a junior artist.
Yes. I started out as an
before.
environment artist.
Yeah, environment artist. So was that because at the time you couldn't find a position as a lighting artist, so you
Yes.
used your skills and you kind of got an entry, and then eventually you found an opportunity to do some lighting afterwards, right?
Yeah, that pretty much was it. It's because Ubisoft Singapore they are a co-development studio for a lot of the Assassin's Creed titles. So the teams are smaller, but they take up a significant chunk of the work of the whole game. But even then, their team is smaller. They don't really have a need for a lot more. Maybe wouldn't need as much lighting artists or even as many environment artists or designers and stuff like that compared to the main studios that are in other parts of the world. So it was a bit tough trying to get a lighting position then. So I ended up as a junior artist working, just going through the process, trying to understand how is it like working in a video game studio, because video games productions is also a whole different thing altogether from animation. There are a lot more concerns, performance and stuff like that. The first time I actually have to learn about profiling and all that stuff. Yeah. So and then all of that, well, just building up the knowledge base in there, and then when the opportunity opened up for me that they were needing a new lighting artist on the team, I jumped on it.
Okay.
And yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting way of doing it as well. So you would say that because you went to Digipen, you had the necessary skills to kind of plan for the long haul, take a step as a junior environment artist or artist, and then work your way towards the type of job you wanted, basically. But you said you were also at Supermassive Games in the UK, I believe. How was that compared to, say, Ubisoft and Tiny Island Production?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit closer to how animation works for the type of games that Supermassive are doing. So back at Ubisoft, we work mostly in open world games on proprietary engines. So a lot of the things in terms of lighting, a lot of the key things that we talk about for open world games are time of day. So we're talking about big picture style of mood and tone rather than very distinctive like character base or tight corridor directionality and stuff like that. Whereas in Supermassive, it's the complete opposite. It's fully cinematic, it's single player, fixed cameras, and all that stuff. So the approach we could take is very different. Though at Supermassive, we get to focus a lot more on character lighting. A lot of tighter shots. Then we get to interplay. We can start using a lot of the art fundamentals that we have learned, the Rembrandt style lighting and all that stuff. So to really dial in on that horror mood that we wanted to get. And yeah, we don't have to consider that the cameras can move all the time, because most of the shots are fixed cameras, kind of like the old Resident Evil style games and stuff like that. So we can cheat cheat a lot more.
And compared to Ubisoft, would you say it was more technical working at Ubisoft and more creative working at Supermassive, or what would you say was the key differences?
I would say two different approaches, which after a while working on Ubisoft, you learn about the big picture stuff and all that, but there's a whole other side of lighting or cinematography, cinematics and stuff like that you don't really get as much exposure in while working at working at Ubisoft. So having the chance to work at Supermassive on Man of Medan, or just a totally different type of genre of games, really just broadens your experience, gives you a lot more. So there's not exactly the one is better than the other. It's just they give you different experiences, and actually ultimately all that experience can culminate into having you become a better artist.
And what engine was it that you used at Supermassive?
It was Unreal. So
And how was that compared to the proprietary engines?
so proprietary
Which
engines usually,
I personally know the answer already, obviously,
yeah.
but it's for the other people.
But yeah, so proprietary engines usually are designed with the specific projects in mind. When if you want to build a open world game, you will have technologies and rendering technologies and other sort of technologies in place that work for open world game. You won't have very fancy camera systems, because open world games tend not to have complex camera work in terms of they have complex camera systems in other ways, where how they detect camera collisions and stuff like that as you're moving around the world. Open world games tend to have time of day, so they focus a lot of getting that whole process in place and having an easy way for you to manage and to edit across the time of day, because you want to be able to see things fast and easily. So you get a timeline where you can see 0 hour to 12 hour to 24 hours. You can adjust the color range, you can adjust the saturation, you can adjust atmospherics in terms of the fog, the humidity level of the fog and stuff like that. Whereas in Unreal, technically Unreal is built for FPS games first and foremost. This is how Epic Games got their start. So a lot of the stuff they still have in place are very FPS driven. So it's different, and you really do, depending on what type of games you're doing, especially in Unreal, you probably would need to take out features or put in new features and stuff like that. So it's very interesting.
It's so that leads us to the main topic now. Is you then went to Unity Technologies for over a year at Denmark. So what were the type of focus and responsibility, and how was that compared to the previous experiences?
So for one, I'm not actually making any games. So Unity, they make the platform, right? They make the engine that people work from. So a lot of the things, the team I joined, the Live and Digital team, was a team that was set up specifically to try and bring more artists or more professional from the industry to use Unity. Especially since if you compare, just look at ArtStation, you can tell the amount of Unreal art versus the amount of Unity art. It's very, very disparate, and it's not a good look. Because honestly speaking, Unity does have pretty capable lighting and rendering in terms of what they offer for the engine. So yeah, our job is to try and balance out that, get more people to come and use Unity, show them that Unity can do the same things that Unreal can do. Some caveats aside, but they both are equally powerful. So you don't really, it shouldn't be a choice you make when you're making a cool piece of art. It should be more of which one are you comfortable with using, pretty much.
So which one would you say is the easiest to pick up and learn for one person, like an individual artist?
Yeah, so if you're an individual artist, I would say, unfortunately, it's Unreal. It's a lot easier for you to just jump in and learn. So most of the stuff are a lot more user friendly. Although the way Unreal does certain things, they design certain features to be pretty black box. So you have maybe 2 or 3 controls, for example, for this particular like lighting rendering feature. Maybe like something like volumetric light maps. If anyone knows about volumetric light maps in Unreal, you get 2 options. You get an option to increase the bucket, the maximum bucket size, and the density of the probes for the volumetric light maps. And that's about it. When it comes time to troubleshooting, you can play around those 2 values, but sometimes they don't work, and you have a tough time trying to troubleshoot. And there are a lot more caveats to come into place, even though they make the system easier for you for Unreal. But for the most part, if you are like an environment artist, you just want a very clear, like modern engine to work in with all the stuff that modern engines, even the proprietary engines, are using anyway, PBR workflows and stuff like that. Then yeah, just jump on the Unreal, just make your environment in the correct PBR system or the correct PBR workflow, and then just light them, throw a skylight, throw a directional light, do a bit of post processing, and then you're done. You get a pretty, well, yeah, let's get a start of a pretty decent portfolio piece, and then from there on you can just start improving upon it and stuff like that.
So I'll point out a few things that I think with Unreal Engine, and you can see if you agree or not, or if there's something else on top of it. So there's certain things I like with Unity, and I think they have a better post-process control in color grading, for example.
Yes, I love the color curves in. So the way the one of the best thing. So the unfortunate thing is because Unity has 2 rendering engines, the URP and the HDRP. So we'll just talk about HDRP because URP, if as a singular artist, just use HDRP. Don't bother about URP. It's a waste of time. Personal opinion, not objective, but personal opinion. In HDRP, the volume system is the same, essentially the same as the post-processed volumes in Unreal, although they put a lot more systems in there for that you control. Fog itself is just placed in there, so it's a little bit cleaner because you get with this one volume and it just drop all these features in place that you want to override, which includes the sky, there are the physical sky now, and then there's also volumetric clouds and stuff like that now with the newest HDRP versions. So everything is contained within one node rather than in Unreal you have all these flying icons all over the place. So that's one. The color curves, one of the few things I found that's very close to DaVinci Resolve. You literally have a curve that allows you to adjust saturation by luminance value. So you can have the areas of your image that are darker in luminance, lowest segments, darker segments of your range be less saturated than the higher segment, and it's easily just controlling it by a curve. Whereas in Unreal, you need to they go into shadows, go and turn down the saturation, and then maybe not enough. You probably need to push down the gain, remove the saturation a little bit, and then a little bit more work to adjust. And I don't really like seeing all the numbers and stuff. The curve is much nicer.
More visual.
Yeah.
So what else? I guess Unity has a lot easier in terms of changing the values of the Kelvin temperature and the day and night. So they now have just simple slider, and you just slide it. It will pick daytime, mid, cloud, or such and such. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. Is that better? Is that different? Is that easier than Unreal, or what do you
think? I think it's definitely a lot easier for new artists. For new artists that they are still learning about the knowledge about physical light values and stuff like that, those settings are a godsend rather than go. So at least Unity make the assumption to centralize that idea and to centralize those values within, just actually bake it into the actual parameters of the light itself. So you will not go wrong because Unity tells you that these are the values you should use. So use it, rather than sometimes you might go onto Google and just start searching physical light values, and you get a whole bunch of different disparate charts of results, which sometimes it's nice. You get I can probably use from this range to this range maybe, but as a beginning artist, you wouldn't want too many information to cloud your judgment, because the main thing is to learn first, to understand the systems. Some of this knowledge can come, the solid base of some of this knowledge can come in a bit later, but you just need to learn to try and use those values first. Just get the closest value first, and then if you want to play around with it afterwards, when you're confident enough, sure, you can go ahead, start breaking the rules and stuff.
In Maya, when you do lighting, you have I don't remember the name, but you have the ability to assign lights to affect certain objects and exclude and include. And on Unreal you have that as well, but you can only do, I think, 2 or maximum 2, and it's also very limited. There's one thing in Unity that I found also better is the layers and how it controls with occlusion. Is that you can do tons of objects, tons of light, and kind
just
of make
it
a lot of creative.
Yeah.
So how does that work, and what are your opinions about that?
If you know what you're doing, that's very powerful. I do find that Unreal giving us only 3 channels is limiting, but for most new artists, they probably wouldn't use them anyway. So you will only at most use 2 channels: channel 0 for environment, channel 1 for background, channel 1 for characters. That's it. Having more channels, it's somewhat close when in Unity with all the layering and all the occlusions and all the channel stuff. You can do almost something like light linking in Maya, where you can link certain objects specifically, or certain channels or objects to be affected by certain lights. You get a lot more control, but only when you know really what you're doing and you really want to do that, when those features become very powerful for you.
And you also have let's talk a little bit about the disadvantages as well. So Unity I've found to be more technical skills are required to really do great stuff and better stuff than you could easily do in Unreal, for example. At least from my point of view, and I'm not very tech savvy, so that's why it's quite a long learning curve and a lot of extra things you need to pick up and learn to achieve something in Unity versus Unreal. I found out. What's your thoughts on that and experience in terms of that?
I do agree. I think probably as a more experienced artist, you probably can pick out a little bit faster, but someone new to be confused, pretty much. Something that takes you like one step in Unreal probably take you 3 or 4 steps in Unity, because there are a lot of caveats involved. Sometimes you might, I need to turn on something in this camera system first. Okay, then it works with HDRB works, the volume system works, and then you have all these controls and you have all this different types of skies. Which one should I use? And then it's become too much. And then some stuff where back to Unreal where we have volumetric light maps, because they just layer, they just spread out all the probes for you while the baking process, while the pre-computing process. But in Unity, you actually have to manually place probes, and then no one wants to do that. And then, but Unity, because the emphasis for Unity's motto is that it's democratized. The engine itself is democratized. So a lot of things are pretty bare bones. And then this is where a lot of users can come in and start adjusting and just adding on features and stuff as and when they like. And a lot of the diehard Unity users love that about Unity. But for an artist, you don't really want to do manual probe laying. Then you have to end up going to the asset store to find. Hopefully, if you can find a free one that someone has made that makes it easier for you to do your job. If not, you probably have to pay for a probe solution, which is something that may be something that Unity would have provided by themselves, because that is no one wants to lay probes manually, pretty much.
That's interesting that you mentioned. So, do you think Unity ecosystem as a whole depends a bit too much on all the asset store plugins and solutions? Because if it exists in asset store, and there tends to be quite a few, for example, the pro one, there's 2 free ones, and then there are a couple of paid ones. If that exists, that suggests that people want it and it needs to have it. And a lot of veterans and experienced people, especially if they favor Unreal, the argument is that a lot of things is already included in Unreal, even though there is a plugin folder and you technically do have to download the plugins in Unreal too. It's far more things to do in Unity when you want to achieve the same base engine tech level. You have to do a lot. What are your thoughts on that and experience?
I think it's just, speaking objectively, it's probably a difference in the business goals of both companies, for one. I don't mind having the asset store, and then I have to go on to asset store to find certain stuff. If they are very specialized tool, sure, it makes sense for them to be on asset store and to offer that tool to you at a reasonable price, and then which we'll pick up and use for your specific goals. But for more generalized stuff, not a good idea to still have it and be reliant on the community to provide those tools for you. So if no one can figure it out, and then these 2 different users decide, we'll go this way or we'll go this way, neither or which is clear. But when you use both systems, you find that they don't really work with whatever upgrades that, because Unity also, the engine also upgrades by itself. There are also certain features coming into place, also certain technologies or certain approaches they are changing in the way they approach the engine, the building of the engine for the next generation or for the future. So a lot of these tools then become obsolete. So if the users themselves gave up on trying to update them, then we're stuck, because Unity doesn't offer us. Then either we write one ourselves, which most of us are artists, we probably aren't that skilled enough to do that, or we do it manually, or we just have to wait for someone to do it for us. But the flip side for Unreal, even though they have everything in place, is if you want to change something, sometimes it's very difficult to change. There may be certain things that they feel that is right for what they do, because Unreal technically designs most of the modern features for UE4 to service Fortnite of sorts. Mostly because Fortnite, that's the test bed, right, for development, to see whether our tools and our features fit into a proper live production process. So a lot of the feedback, or a lot of the back and forth, the feedback loop itself comes from Fortnite team coming back to the feature team, engine team, and then that's the feedback loop. So a lot of things are built for those kind of projects in mind. So they may not work for every single type of project. And then when it doesn't work for a project, if your team is of a decent size, you have a good engine programmer on the team, they can probably make the change for you. They can probably introduce new changes for you, or specific stuff that you want. But if you're a singular artist and you decided you really, really want to do something specific, it's really, really hard sometimes to get what you want. You might have to do a lot of hacks or cheat, but that's also a fun part, because learning how to smokes and mirrors, so that's the part. That's pretty much the main job of a video game artist.
Yep. So that brings us to the package manager in Unity. A lot of people have commented to me, and when I have this similar discussion, is why the Unity has the package manager, and you have to make a lot of effort just downloading stuff, and then there's different versions and there's different things, and they can't overlap because there's two, as you said earlier, there's two different engines technically, or it's not two different engines, it's two different pipelines.
Too many dependencies, and then when you start layering on stuff, then just crumbles and stuff like that. So,
and for a lot of people, that's a turn off and a disadvantage. While I guess from a Unity's company's point of view, it's an advantage, because you can choose to install a lot of stuff and take hard drive space and so on. What are your thoughts and opinion and experience on that?
Well, package manager, for the most part, you will probably, a lot of the things you probably are downloading from package manager are additional sample content, depending on certain features that you added, like HDRP itself. If you open up HDRP in the content browser, in the package manager, you can literally see some samples. Like I think they have right now, because they have the new lens flare system, you can just download the lens flare, and then they have a whole list of different cool looking lens flare effects for you to play around with. It's a good thing for them to put it up there, so it's easy for you to access. And then, but then the caveat comes when you need to when you are trying to do something specific. Like I'm on this particular version of the engine. There's a new version of HDRP that's out. I want to try this feature, so I want to upgrade up to it. Sometimes it breaks, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes package manager decides to, I'm not going to do it for you, and some other weird stuff happens. And one thing is, a lot of the error messages in Unity don't make sense to a layman. So it's hard to troubleshoot, even if you really, really want to. I think the whole idea of package manager is cool. It's the same as just trying to integrate Bridge into Unreal 5. It's a similar system. Of course, package manager try to do more, so they probably have a longer time before they can stabilize and really, really make sure that whatever you do, we'll find a solution to not break your engine.
Okay. So far, what would you say is the pros of using Unity as a lighting artist and the pros of using Unreal as a lighting artist?
I say, well, for one, the post-processing stuff. If you enjoy, if you are maybe someone who's used to doing stuff in DaVinci Resolve and you want to try real-time engine, for example, maybe Unity would be a good idea. Although you need a couple more steps in order to get to the same steps in Unreal. But the new HDRP templates and stuff like that do offer you a pretty big jumping, quite a good foundational jumping step to start working in HDRP. So I would say, yeah, if you enjoy playing with curves, color curves especially, or doing post-processing in a more visual way rather than looking at numbers and shifting numbers around, I think Unity is good. If you are an environment artist or any type of artist that you are trying to get into real-time art, and then all you need is an engine to display your work and stuff, Unreal is definitely better. And then especially if you're a lighting artist and you're trying to build a portfolio, it's a lot of, with the crazy amount of stuff that Unreal throws at you for free every month, tons of environments for you to relight and stuff like that. It's a lot much. It's a lot better to just work in Unreal if you're really building up your portfolio as a younger artist, the younger lighting artist in general.
That's interesting that you point out, because kind of what happened to me when I decided to pursue lighting a bit more, even though I was originally a Unity user, more. Well, originally I was Unreal because I studied, and then we were using Unreal. And then Unreal 2004, and then I think it was Unreal 2007, and then pretty old versions of the Unreal basically is what I was used to, where you have to go into Unreal script and you have to script the guns and get the effects and all old school hardcore kind of stuff you have to do. It wasn't easier back then, that's for sure. Then I also used Unity before they when it was like pro licenses and it wasn't really a lot of free stuff, and long before the asset store was fully developed, they didn't have any Playmaker or Bolt or visual scripting or visual shaders or anything really. It was just an engine with you code stuff and then you kind of basic light and that's it. So I had experience with both and I kept using both, but when it came to lighting, it was really hard to find good free assets on in Unity. I think that's one of the weaknesses for Unity right now, from my point of view anyway, is there's not enough free content for people to teach it properly. Like when I make Unreal tutorials, very easy to get started, very easy to show stuff, very easy to do mentorship for it. If I do Unity, a lot harder to do mentorship, a lot harder to do it, and you have to spend a lot of time looking and testing ahead of time. If you use Unity's own assets, they tends to not be the same, because when they make it, they use a lot of stuff from Asset Store. They use a lot of scripting,
a lot of custom stuff that might break because you're using a new engine that it was before. Yeah,
exactly, and that's a huge disadvantage, I think, to prove to, for example, Unreal users that Unity is a good engine. It's definitely can do a lot of the same stuff, but it just doesn't have a lot of out of the box things to get started. And I think that's a big problem. Every time I open Unity and do stuff, it's and I had this discussion not too long ago, and we did ask, like, okay, if Unity is making custom scripts and codes in their own demos that they're pitching, and everyone, oh, this looks great, that's not a good thing. That's a disadvantage. That you're basically telling me, cool, that's your capability, but I can't do that as a one artist. That's not something I have access to. And then you have to go to GitHub sometimes to do other stuff. It's such a tedious and long process that you just end up giving up and go, fine, I'll go to Unreal Engine.
Yeah, and they give us so much free things. Yeah, so much easier to use Unreal altogether. Yeah,
but that's not to say I think Unity is inferior by any means. I just think it makes it too hard for people, which is funny, because when it first came out, it was praised for being a great user interface, intuitive, easy. A lot of programmers love Unity for sure, but you either have to have a very good team as an artist to use it and enjoy it properly, so the team kind of implements stuff.
Just get the features that you need for what you need to do, pretty much.
Yeah. And that's how it is for me right now at my job. Is I don't think I would enjoy it as much if it wasn't for the fact I have a very talented tech artists, very talented graphic artists and programmers to kind of say, this is what I want. Good luck.
Yeah, which is also one of the main problems that Unity themselves are trying to solve as well, where the live and digital team has come in to help. Like the stuff that I was involved in when I was there, like the Volvo templates. Although it's a partnership with Volvo because we wanted to showcase other stuff with Volvo as well. There were also the template itself. You can actually download it now. You can go into the Unity Hub and you can find it. You can download it off. It has at least some form of tutorial talking about physical light values, talking about how we approach the GPU light baker, the progressive GPU light mapper that we use to bake that scene, and then some of the optimization steps that we did, and how we approach lighting that environment and stuff like that. So we're trying well, at least I was there when I was there. We were trying to come up with all these projects and stuff, so that, and they pretty much don't contain anything that is custom, or anything that we only need it because they have a team, they have all the cool programmers doing all the coding for them. I get it. These are done mostly by artists. So the most you have is maybe a tech artist coming out with a little bit more of a tool that you can just plug and play into anywhere else. Like Unity doesn't have a. I don't think they have it right now as well. They don't have a dedicated screenshot button to take high res screenshots or anything like that. So we actually had one of our tech artists do it at the time.
Yeah, I think they have. I think they have one in Packet Manager or something recently. They added some kind of screenshot tool. At least someone at work told me, because we were using the Sajid's plugin, which is very popular to use for screenshotting. And someone told me that Unity has its own, but it's again, there's steps to get it to work. It's not just like in Unreal, you just drop down and do a screenshot.
It's there. They know that the artist will need a screenshot too, and they put it into the UI.
So what's the difference between when you go into the lighting tab in Unity? You have like different settings. You have the shadow distance mask, shadow mask. You know, you have the progressive light mapper. You have indirect boost. You have direct boost. You have directional light, non-directional light. So you have quite a lot actually. How's that different or better or than what Unreal has?
They are, well, the same type of lights you have in Unity, you have in Unreal as well. The type of settings that they have are pretty much almost the same, aside from the way they name it is sometimes different. In Unreal, you can define shadow resolution, but it's a number from 0 to 1, or even 2 or 3. It's like a 1 times or 2 times or 0.5 times. And then your actual max shadow resolution number is somewhere else. That's in Unreal. Whereas in Unity, you can define per light how much is the exact size is taking up on the actual shadow map array. So you can define, the small light can be 64, can be 64. The bigger light can be 1024 because it's a big light that's coming down and needs more resolution and stuff like that. And then on top of that, you can even define. You can go into the actual project settings. They call it, can't remember what they call it, the rendering settings and stuff like that. You can define low, medium, high, what is the exact values that you use, and then you can use those as well. So it's just the same things, but the way they present it is different. But they mostly have the same thing. Progressive GPU light mapper came out earlier than Unreal. Unreal didn't have a GPU light mapper until recently, and before that it was the community made one by I think it was Lo Shuang, I think. Yeah. The GPU mapper, which is a different system.
It's interesting that you said what. Well, we'll talk about two different things at the same time. Because did you get the news that Unity bought Veta Digital?
Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to think about what that means and how that might affect Unity as a company?
I think it's it puts Unity on the map in a way that, well, if it hadn't before, it's really now on the map a lot more. So I think buying Weta is probably a strategic choice of them on their side. Not so sure how much of the tools that they get from Weta, how long it would take before users like you and me are actually able to get access to them, or even if they are applicable to us as video game artists yet, because Weta does very, very high-end film and VFX stuff. Maybe they will work when if Unity wants to make a push for virtual productions, to try and sell Unity as an engine that can also be used for virtual productions. Maybe those two could help, or for not Vista. Crap, I can't remember the term right now. Yeah, but
so the reason I mentioned that first is because when I was looking at the roadmap for well, the progressiveness of Unreal Engine versus Unity. So Unreal has 7 years head start.
Mhm.
Well, they used to anyway. That's where this discussion is taking us now. Is they had 7 years head start, but I've been told. I haven't confirmed it yet, but I believe Unreal technically has below 1,000 people actually working on the engine and the engine development. I think it's average 6 to 900. I think the numbers I was given, while Unity is already reaching 2,500 people, I believe. Does that sound correct according to your experience, or kind of like? Because I mean, it's an engine company. They don't really do games. They don't really do. Anything else as far as I know. So obviously everything they have is dedicated to developing the tech and everything. And then I checked which you indirectly mentioned already, the GPU light mapper that Unity had it first. Then I checked like when Unreal released stuff and when Unity released stuff, and Unity has on average been at least a year ahead of Unreal, getting into VR, getting into AR, even MetaHumans. Sure, they have MetaHumans, the generator, but even Unity had a head start in terms of the level of detail and character as well, which didn't capture a lot of attention, unfortunately, but it exists. They have it already. I think they call it digital human at the time, and I don't know if they're improving it or not. So that's very interesting for me because anyone who studies analytical economic will, by calculating this, come up with the same conclusion that if this rate continues, Unity should and will surpass Unreal's ability to keep up in technology, tech tools, and they already have, as we discussed, a lot of cool tools in Unity. It's just a bit tedious to get to it, but once you get access to it and you figure out, it tends to be a lot better and easier for me anyway to do it versus when I do it in Unreal. What are your thoughts on the development time and the future ahead if you start comparing?
Well, if we were to start comparing in that manner, with Unity, definitely, if they can keep up the pace, they can get the right people in to. So a lot of the time, Unity pulls. Why Unity always falls in the limelight? They don't fall into the limelight. They're always in the background and stuff, even though their tech comes up first and stuff like that. It's because most of the time it's in beta, it's in alpha, a lot longer than you imagine. So even though Unity kind of has more development stuff, Unity as a company doesn't just make engines. They don't just make the Unity engine. They have a lot of other products in place as well. They have Reflect, they have virtuals and multiplayer, all the other subsystems that mid-sized studio or even larger studios will want to purchase as middleware. So
which I think is an advantage, right? The analytics tools and all those, they have like a lot of things, which is why I picked Unity when I had my first company. It's because they have a lot of business, extra stuff that's useful, at least for the indie company to use. So they have other stuff, but it's linked to Unity as well as an ecosystem, though, right?
You don't really need to use Unity to use those tools. You can integrate them into your system, because these are all acquisitions that Unity has done over the years to build up their portfolio of products, right? Because they consider the engine is just one product. It's not the product. Whereas for Unreal, kind of, they have 600 people, but those 600 people are all working on that engine. Whereas you might have a smaller percentage that are working on the actual engine for Unity. Whereas they have all of all this different development stuff, plus the R&D stuff, plus the AR foundational stuff, or the lab stuff, all the sciencey stuff, feature stuff they're doing. Those are also part of that 2,500 figure. So it's hard. It's hard to say how the number works out.
I believe in terms of money, I think Unity is estimated more in value, which I found shocking when I found that out. But Unreal obviously have income sources from while Epic Games specifically
Mm-hmm.
has income sources from the Epic Marketplace asset store. They earn quite a lot from there, minus all the free stuff, obviously. Fortnite obviously made them a fortune couple of years, which I think is what made them grow a lot more than anything. And Unity, you say you have other product. That means they also have other income sources besides Unity. And Unity, I believe, also based on what you just said, they focus a lot on businesses as well, like business tech development and tools for businesses, and they try and get more into the movie industry. I've noticed, and
They're diversifying their portfolio, whereas
Mm.
Unreal does diversify a little bit, but they're still pretty much for game developers as a whole. They understood where their niche is, what their tool is meant to do, which is why they focus on it a lot more. So
do you think Unity will eventually be more used outside of the game industry more and more?
at the rate they're going, probably. And if they can get their tools, if they can just shorten that bridge that you need to that hurdle that you need in order to understand Unity or understand certain features of Unity, I'm sure Unity will could be next, probably maybe in 5 to 10 years time. You might run to a clothing store and try out like nowadays they have like the AR clothing tech where you can just stand in front of a mirror and then they put clothes over you and stuff like that. That could be run in Unity for all we know in the next 5 to 10 years. Even virtual productions could be done in Unity as well, or even like certain high end visualization stuff, or maybe simulation stuff. Recently, I think Unity had a summit or a conference for systems based stuff, so they are moving towards stuff that are not exactly games. So, like the recent summit that they had is about you can really do circuitry or engineering simulations in Unity. They actually came out with like a tool set for that. So it's very clear that they are moving in different directions. So their focus are different altogether.
That makes sense though, because more and more people are using game engine for other stuff. So I think what Unity has understood ahead of time, which is an advantage for them, I think, not a disadvantage. It's not really called a game engine anymore. Not even Unreal Engine is not supposed to be on a game engine anymore, because people are using it for other things. It's a technology tool now. It used to be a game engine, obviously, 10, 15 years ago. It was just for games. But I think Unity has realized that they're not really developing technology just for games. They are realizing it's for people who want to visualize and interact and do some other things as well. Because I remember when I did a project a couple of years ago, we're talking about many years ago, we made like a simulation engine inside Unity for Tokyo oil industry and Tokyo's deep sea dive industry, so people could get like coaching on how to use the boat and everything. And I think already then I realized that and I mentioned it before that we call it game engine, but I don't think it's the future ahead. It's not really a game engine. It's more like we're using a real time engine, and it happens to be accessible and usable by all kinds of industry. Do you think that means people who are already established in the game industry, perhaps tired of the game industry, because the average lifetime for a game developer tends to be apparently 7 years before they get before they get burned out or they quit or something. It depends on, of course, individual, also which country and over time and culture, but that's changing luckily a little bit. So that's obviously happening as well. But do you think it will be easier for people to stay within, because of the technology, they can switch industries without actually relearning a new tool all the time because it's being used so many places? Because at least it's happening from the movie industry. A lot of people are coming from the movie industry, and their skills are transferable into games now because the engine is capable of doing some of the stuff, which increases competition as well. So what are your thoughts on these kind of things?
I think it's actually opened up. At least we're not. If you're someone who really want to explore something beyond games, there is a window. There's a slowly opening window for you to start experiencing that. Or even other people who, I want to jump into games, like you say, like people from film are starting to come into games because of the openness of the engines and stuff, especially. Or even you can go into visualizations. You can even start out your own business doing like VR visualizations for real estates or for architecture and stuff like that. There is a market for that, and they'll stick to the actual engines themselves, both Unity and Unreal. There are people who are looking for artists who know how to do stuff in those engines and to do those specific types of visualizations and stuff like that. So it's definitely, I think it's a more exciting time than ever, especially as technology continues to grow. We see what happens with Unity when they start when the actual Beta 2 starts becoming available to common man like us, and then who knows, we might even see a resurgence of more short film projects or more indie film projects coming from people, like with availability. When technology becomes available to someone or to a group of people, this is when you start seeing people taking the technology, and then previously they do not have the technology in order to act their creativity upon. Now the technology is available for you. It's time to jump on and start making your own stuff and making cool stuff. So it's probably going to be an exciting time in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I'll be old by then. Who knows if I'll still be around to do the game stuff. I'll be like, yeah, I'm tired. My 7 years or three decades ahead. Too late. It's too much. So, where do you think that puts other game engines like Godot engine, CryEngine, Lumberyard, which is technically based on a CryEngine, RPG Maker is still very popular. Where do you think those engines come? There's another engine called Uni engine, which I've tried, which I think is pretty powerful as well. What do you think? Where do they stand with all of this focus on Unreal Engine and Unity engine? Even CryEngine is kind of in the back of the head now. What are your thoughts on that?
Whereas you have Unity and Unreal opening up, among all these small crevices, this is where all these niche engines fall into. Because like Godot is really powerful for 2D stuff. Some might even argue that Godot is better for 2D than Unity. So there are diehard communities of Godot users that use Godot for game development fully. RPG Maker, it's cool if you want to, as a hobbyist, you want to quick and easy and do some pixel games and stuff like that. And then you have Game Maker and all the other stuff as well. Uni Engine has a very cool PBR based rendering system. From what I see, they have a lot. Even like they have a luminance debug mode. The last I saw, they have like a proper luminance debug mode where you can see my luminance ranges. They even display the actual charts and everything for you. That is cool. But Uni Engine seems to be marketed solely for simulation based or visualization based industries, where you might want to put like an interior, like a house interior that you've done for a client, put it into Uni Engine, and then you do the lighting and stuff like that, and then you show, for safety or for certain specific like regulation reasons, you need to show the luminance values, because there is a thing for building houses or building factories or building warehouses where you need to make sure that certain areas comply to a certain limit of light and stuff like that. So they could be marketed for those niche where they make it such that we scrap away all this. Oh, you probably won't need blueprints. You won't need visual scripting. You just need something like Blender with a real-time rendering capabilities, but allows you to drag and drop things easily. You can see beautiful things right at the start, and then you can just still move around. You can probably have simple controls to put on VR headset and then move around and stuff like that. So this is where all these engines will lie, in the niche, which definitely still the market is big enough to accommodate all of them.
So here's a different question, because I have a weird brain when it comes to thinking strategically on these things. Would you, according to you, so most people when you're learning stuff and you're trying to get industry, it's very common for most people to say, pick up Maya, pick up Unreal Engine, use the industry standard in the game industry. And it tends to be Unreal, it tends to be ZBrush, it tends to be Maya. But of course, over time, things shift. Now Blender is kind of becoming a thing, which a lot of people already knew, but now it's like more official. I want to learn Blender. Let's go to Blender. I have clients who specifically demand that you use Blender. There are people who are solely using open source technology now as a culture, as a company. So there are some advantages. So for newcomers or juniors or students that are watching later or now, what are your thought process on picking what tool to use? Before I give you my input, let's hear your input.
I
And
would
why?
say if you are really, really brand new, as a new artist, you probably won't have money for a Maya license unless you go other means, or you have a student license because you are still studying. I would say just get the easiest tool to get, where you can find a whole lot of documentation, well documented documentations that are easy for you to pick up and learn. Because as a new artist, what you need to do is to build up your confidence level and your knowledge base. It doesn't matter whether you can jump onto multiple engines yet. Once you know something, all the fundamental skills should apply when you join a new studio and stuff like that. Because as you enter a new studio, there'll always be a culture shock. Every studio does things differently. They may say we use Unreal, but it could be a totally custom version of Unreal. They may be using Unity, and they have a lot more subsystems that is in there. It doesn't even look like Unity anymore. So it's always find something where we can easily get the resources you need to learn, and then go from there. Because at this stage, as a young, you just need to build up that level of confidence in using a tool, or to understand the fundamentals of what needs to do.
So my point of view in this is because I'm thinking of multiple layers first. I'm thinking if you pick stuff like Unreal and big tools, you are whether people want to admit it or not, they are competing also with a lot of people doing exactly the same thing. They're picking the same tool, and they might be better than you, or they might not. But generally, you have to know yourself as well, like what level you are capable of reaching and how quicker. So often I will mention that I pick something that is like in the middle or even not in the middle, because there's still a industry for it, like you said, Uni Engine, because not a lot of people actually know it or teach it. There's a lot of option for you to earn side freelancing, contracts, and even opportunities. One of the reasons I get a lot of contracts, and also why I joined this studio here, they couldn't, for the love of God, find a very good Unity lighting artist, because the most people are in Unreal, and right. So for me, it was an advantage to go back to Unity and focus more on Unity, not only because I think there's way too many talented Unreal lighting artists, but there's not enough people focusing on Unity because it's tedious. You need more tech skills, you need to have more patience, you need to go through a lot of steps to do it. So often I'll advise people for this reason that sometimes it's better to pick a more niche or less accessible tool, because then you will be the person people go to, because there's less competition basically. So with that answer, what are your thoughts with that kind of approach to picking the road ahead for individuals?
It depends on whether you have the time for it, right? Like if you are an artist who's studying and is about 6 months away or even 3 months away from graduating, it's a bit tough if you want to build up a portfolio while also learning a software that you might not be familiar with. So if you are just starting out and you have a very clear mind that I can see the niche here, if you realize earlier on and you hatch your bet earlier,
like Bitcoin.
Like Bitcoin. If you jump on the Bitcoin when it was like maybe a couple of dollars only, now you're a millionaire. So but if you go in too late, then you're kind of like catching up. You're sort of neither here nor there. You're still catching up in terms of your skills, and then you're still catching up technologically and stuff like that. So it's probably a balance that the artists themselves have to ask whether they have the time to do it.
So before we end, What are your three advice or tips to people? Either one, looking to become a lighting artist, two, want to improve lighting but not are lighting artists, or just generally. Do you have any advices of like what engine they should use of the two or others we talked about, or what approach to use to get started if they're lost or they're confused and they don't know where to go?
Well, for someone who wants to go into being a lighting artist, I guess pick something that's comfortable, has enough resource for you, and just start lighting. That's definitely, and also beyond just lighting. As a lighting artist, personally, I feel that you don't just do lighting. You need to understand, especially if you want to work in a studio environment and work with other artists within a studio environment. You need to understand what other people are doing as well. You might you might not be the like an expert in it, or even be extremely knowledgeable in it, but you need to understand what someone else is doing. Where at the end of the day, when you're lighting for that game or that project, everything every other department's work, it depends on you to make them a cohesive whole. Because as a lighting artist, you are the glue that makes everything together. Bad lighting will just make a bad game most of the time. If
Okay.
even though you have a beautiful looking assets and beautiful looking environments or characters, if you don't light properly, then it's not gonna look good. So you need to understand what other people are doing and to really be there to help to collaborate with everyone. So that's one. For someone who wants to improve their lighting but is not a lighting artist, I would say try and look up for more references. That's definitely helpful. And be clear about what your references are, right? You don't. So let's say you're doing a forest scene and you want a certain time of day, then look for images of forest in the time of day if you can, and then don't just try and look for a specific type of forest. Maybe you can find jungles, you can find forests in other parts of the world and stuff like that. Just try and compare different types of results and references, and then try and come out which one fits the type of mood or the tone or the color ranges that you want to find for your piece that works best for your piece.
Think that's what we have time for, at least according to our schedule. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you everyone who is watching it afterwards, for that matter too. And thank you for you, Adrian, for being available and doing this. It was quite
Yeah.
interesting and educational, and hopefully we can do some more in the future.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I will talk a little bit more with Adrian afterwards, after I close the chat and broadcast. But let's say goodbye to everyone. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a good weekend.